Good morning, good morning, good morning. How you all doing today? It is Saturday, March 4th, 2023. Thanks for tuning in and to the Saturday premiere show here on the Coffee Q&A live stream. So every once in a while when we release a big main video for the channel, and what I mean by main video, typically Saturday morning releases are the actual main, what I would consider the main releases for that week. The stuff that comes out during the rest of the week is here's kind of additional stuff that we're working on, and I think like stuff that I think you might enjoy. And so on Saturday is really the day when we really put out what's supposed to be the main release. And today's video is called "Man of God Tries Coffee for the First Time," Part 1. And this is a series of that today's video starts off a series of videos about visiting coffee shops in a place called Naalehu, Hawaii. And if you're not familiar with Naalehu is a little town, maybe one of the most southernmost towns in the United States. It's basically at the bottom of the big island of Hawaii in Hawaii. And it's a wonderful little town. I love to go there. I've been going there for years. There's a place there called Punaluu Bake Shop that they make this Hawaiian style sweet bread that I really can't get enough of, to be honest with you. Whenever I go there, it's like I need to buy bread. But that's neither here nor there. But let me here pull up the screen so that you can see what I'm talking about. This is Naalehu, Hawaii, and as you can see, this is the state of Hawaii, right? And the town is here at the southern part of the Big Island. What's going on, Rusty, man? Good to see you. How you doing today? Good morning. Good morning. And for those of you who may be watching, Rusty's mom runs a place called Rusty's Hawaiian Coffee, which is here in the town called Pahala, which is just a few miles away from Naalehu. So I went to the Big Island back in November and was driving, visiting places, visiting people, visiting, Rusty's mom and had a real nice time. And so one of the people that I was visiting was one of my old friends, Bill Alvarez. I know him as Bill Alvarez from college when we went to Hawaii Loa College together in Oahu back in the late 80s, early 90s. Now people know him as Father William. And actually, he's the parish priest for Pahala as well. And so Rusty's mom knows him very well as well. And so it was kind of funny to have that connection. But anyway, so I went to visit him, and he's the pastor of both Naalehu and Pahala. There's two churches there, and the populations of the towns are small enough that the congregations are also quite small. So the diocese, I think, just puts one priest to cover them both. Absolutely, man. I think that the Big Island is probably my favorite of all the islands. And so when I was living there, whenever we would go to another island for, I don't know, vacation, what might say, I would say 8 times out of 10 we would go to the Big Island, and so I really enjoy it there. Anyway, so they've got this church, and it's called the Church of the Sacred Heart, right here. And one of the interesting things about places that grow coffee is that most origins, when you go to origin, whether it's in El Salvador, Central America, South America, Africa, wherever you go in the world, even Hawaii, the coffee is usually not very good. Like no matter how nice coffee may be grown in those areas, the coffee that you find available for the public is usually rather rough. And so here in that for the longest time, that was very true of Hawaii, right? Like you always hear about Kona, but when you actually go to places to drink coffee in Kona, they're a bit troubled. So this time I'd heard that after, and now that we have the specialty coffee movement for the last 20 years, it seems that there's a lot more shops that have opened. And as you can see with my little dots here, there are quite a few other shops that have opened or places to visit. And so in the Big Island or in here, I thought that, so Father William is not a coffee drinker. He's more of a tea drinker. And so I was like, well, why don't I take you on a coffee tour and we'll make a video about it, and you'll get to try coffee and see if we can find coffee that will convert you. And so there's only 3 real coffee shops in Naalehu that were close by. Otherwise, we'd have to drive the 3 hours here to like Captain Cook and to the Kona side, right? So that's, or the other way, maybe an hour and a half to Hilo, which isn't. Oh, that reminds me, there's a place here that I need to add to my little tags that that I need to add. Let me see something here. Is this the place? No. So this is a little bit of a spoiler alert. Here it is. Ko'ana. This is a place that I have to put in. All right, there we go. Spoiler alert, this is going to be a future video. But so you'd have to drive an hour back to Kona to Hilo, or to this place, Ko'ana. There's 2 places here. There's a place called Paradise Roasters in Hilo, and this place called Ko'ana, that actually are like well worth the visit. They're world-class level kind of places. They're not just like little tiny stuff. And Brian wants to know if all 3 of us are working this morning, do you typically get up this early for no reason? Well, I'm working for sure. Actually, I'm supposed to go to dim sum later. Actually, I forgot to tell my cousin. Basically, I'm going to be late. Anyway, so Father William does not drink coffee, and so I decided we're going to go visit some coffee shops. And so luckily in Naalehu, there's actually 3 places to get coffee. There's a place. The first place that we went to, where is it? Is a place called Honua's, and Honua's is a little coffee house that's right down the road from the church. Like it's just a couple moments away. And then the next one is another few moments away. Like everything's pretty much centralized. Really, we could walk, but you'll see. We're in America. Who walks in America, right? And then the next place is called Kalai, and so we went there as well. There's also a farmer's market that will come to play later. And then a bit further down the road, probably about 15 minutes, 10 minutes down the road, is another place here called Miranda Farms. And Miranda Farms is actually a place that's whose family is the family. My cousin who lives in Hawaii, one of his friends, her family owns the farm, and you'll actually see her in one of the episodes. And so in this series of videos, we actually visit all three shops and have coffee and share our thoughts on, how the coffee is and what our thoughts are about it. And hopefully that's something that people will find interesting. So what I've decided to do is that we're going to do each location as a separate episode. And then eventually we're going to combine them all into a compilation episode that'll kind of, string together. But it's not just going to be a simple matter of like, okay, we're going to take all these 3 videos and just link them. That's not. I have pulled footage, additional material that will be in the longer version, because otherwise it's like, why would you watch the longer version? And I understand that. So, and that's kind of what we're waiting for today. That's the first one is about our visit to the place called Honua's, which is a really cute little shop. I would say very, very typical of coffee shops in the world. And the staff is very nice. And, that's kind of what I'll say about it. It's interesting to see, I think when you look at the 3 locations together and the coffee scene overall on the Big Island, and then the larger, like if you start to include Oahu, it's a really, there's been a lot of progression in coffee in Hawaii. And it's much better, and it's a good thing because coffee can be quite difficult. Like I remember one time I was in Hilo several years back, maybe 8 years ago, 9 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was. And I was in Hilo and we were going to get coffee, found this little coffee hut, and they had 100% Kona and 100% Kona for $2 a cup. And if you know anything about Kona, Real Kona is expensive. Like there's a place in Kona called Hula Daddies, and Hula Daddies, as far as Kona, as far as true Kona coffee is concerned, is one of the better producers. Like they produce very high quality. And what I mean by Kona, like there may be a little bit of misnomer if you're watching. So this is the Big Island, right? Now the Kona district is basically, I was hoping it was highlighted, but essentially this area of the island here, right? This is all the Kona district. This is when they talk about Kona coffee, this is typically where it's grown. When they talk about Ka'u coffee, this is the area that it's grown. And this region, whoops, this region here, the southern part. So basically Ka'u and Kona butt up to each other. I'm not sure exactly where the delineation actually changes. It's somewhere right around here. But all of this is considered Ka'u. This is all considered Kona. Kona and Ka'u, for compared to like Central and South America and other parts of the world, are relatively low altitude. And the interesting thing is that if you were to have these kind of if you were to have Kona level altitudes in other growing regions of the world, or if you were to grow coffee at that same elevation in other parts of the world, the coffee would not be as good. It would not have the same level of density, and it would be much harder to make a nicer quality crop. One of the guys was explaining to me this trip that a big reason why Kona and Ka'u are able to produce high quality, good density coffees at relatively low altitudes is because of the way the cycles of the weather work there. So warm days, cool nights, some rain, but not too much rain. And all of that kind of goes together to help the coffee to be of better quality than they would be in a mountainous region at the same 1,500 feet, which is only about 800 to 1,000 meters, right? So that's kind of what the difference is. But so when we talk about Kona, we talk about this area. When we talk about Ka'u, we talk about this area. There are other growing regions in Hawaii. There is coffee being grown on Maui that I've heard of. There's also coffee grown here on Molokai. I've had some of their coffees. I don't know if they're still growing coffee there. And there is coffee being grown on Oahu. So up here in the Central Valley, there is this area. I think it's over here more. So all of this in the Central Valley used to, it's probably still owned by the Dole Corporation. And they used to grow pineapple here. Like when I was living there, this was all pineapple. And then sometime in the late 90s, they pulled their pineapple operations out, and they started leasing the land to other people interested in doing agriculture. And there's some people that are growing coffee here in this region. I don't know how good it is. I think I've only had it once, but those are the places where coffee is grown in Hawaii. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And so, back to my story. So one year I was in Hilo, right? And I went to this coffee shop in Hilo, and they had a sign, 100% Kona coffee. And I went, let's go check it out. So we went in there, and 100% Kona, $2. Now, like I was saying, Hula Daddies, for example, if you were to go to Hula Daddies themselves and say, hey, I want to buy some coffee, let's see how much Hula Daddies coffee is. Oops. Order coffee now. So here, this is dark. Okay, let's use this. Let's use this Hula Daddy Kahiko. They're dark, citrusy flavored dark chocolate, medium and dark roast, $90. Coffee review, 96 points. Within the industry circles, we actually normally think about, when we say coffee review, we usually think 3 to 5 points lower. But that's still over 90. So this should be a very, very high quality coffee. Although I don't know why you take a very high quality coffee and put a dark roast on it, because you really kind of lose a lot of that. Rusty says, all the top of one coffee. Yes, you should brew some of that Rusty's Yellow Couture. Excellent. And Brian's going to start a second espresso. Nice. And Rusty says that his dad, who's actually is the namesake of Rusty's Hawaiian Kau, told me a long time ago that in Kona, the land is really rocky. And when coffee farming first started, a lot of the soil was brought in. Oh, interesting. Interesting. I didn't know that. Which makes sense. I mean, like the Kona district, when you're driving to Kona, like let's say you go from pretty much either direction. So if you land here at the airport, wherever that airport is. Oh no, the airport's over here. The Four Seasons, yeah. So when you land here at the Kona airport, you're pretty much in a lava field, an old lava, a desert. It's essentially a desert because this western side of the island is very dry, relatively speaking. So all of this is old lava fields, and you drive in, and it's just desolation. Then about here, when you pass Kailua Kona, and then you start to drive up on the 11, you're actually starting to rise now in elevation, and so you're actually rising 800, 900 feet in just a mile or so, or less than a mile. And then when you get up to Honolulu, you're kind of there. By the time you're up here in Honolulu or Kealakeku or Captain Cook, even in Honono, Naupupu, you are at the top elevations of, well, at least of the growing regions. You're not really going much further up the mountain. Oh, Young Mo's with us, man. Come on, Young. How are you, man? Good to see you. Good to see you. No, actually, the name Rusty is actually after the father, right? And so my understanding, I'll speak if you don't mind, Rusty, or correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding from what I remember Lori telling me was that it was Rusty's dad, who is Rusty Sr., was the one who had a dream of making his own farm of doing coffee. And so they went there and did it. And wonderful time, beautiful coffees. Actually, I do think that Rusty's is some of the best, or if not the very best coffee in Hawaii. Like to me, it typically beats out whatever Kona's producing. And that's not just because I know Rusty. That's before I got to really know Rusty. I thought of that. The GIS image is great because it's OLAV. Yes. So like if we were to click on layers and zoom in, I mean, part of it is some level. Well, I was going to say some of it is some level of development, but that's not true. Even like the most developed parts of Kona, Kailua, this is it. Right? Like this is pretty much it. That is the sprawl of development in Kailua Kona, which is the main town there. But out here, as you can see, lava flow down, and so some of it up here, like the flow came from up here, right, from the vents of Hualalai. And you could see even here, so these are hundreds of years old. So up here, so as you can see, why is it changing color? Why is it still here? Because we're not what we're seeing from the satellite view. We're not seeing the actual elevation, the rise in elevation. So we're getting a lot of rise in elevation right here. So this whole cascade of like from brown to green is actually the sloping of the mountain rising up to the top. So a lot more rainfall, a lot cooler, because the western side of the island is what we call the leeward side of the island. Because when you look at the state of Hawaii, right, most of the trade winds are blowing this way. And this is true on all the islands, especially like here on Oahu, right? So the winds typically are crossing the islands this way from right to left. And most of the time, and pretty much in all of them, because here you have Mauna Kea, Mauna Loa, that are the biggest mountains in Hawaii. And on Oahu, if you remember going there, you have this Ko'olau mountain range, right? So the winds cross, and any kind of rain, any kind of clouds, in order for them to go over the mountains, they must release their weight, which is the water, the vapor, right? And so they release that through rain. That's why on what we call the windward sides, this side of Oahu, where Kane'ohe is, or this side of the Big Island, where Hilo is, they tend to be more lush and wet compared to the other side of the island. So this side of the Big Island, especially in this area, is more of a desert-like area. And if you remember, Brian, when you were in Oahu, where you were staying here in at the Aulani, this area is much drier, much brighter, much hotter than let's say here in Kane'ohe, because again of that condition where all of the rain has been dropped on the other side of the island from where you are. And that's kind of the same thing with Kona. Now, the difference with Kona and the growing region is that because it is a much higher altitude, there still is a lot of growth going on here. Like, actually, you can see here the island is pretty much a big volcano, right? And there's not much more. Like, everyone's all kind of like small populated areas, but the mass of the island is really this still very active volcano. Brian says, when driving the car, the GPS turned completely gray. There was nothing there. No, I think well, did you? Oh, yeah, if you're in the Big Island, then typically, you're going through those desert areas, and that's probably more of what it's happening on the GPS. I've actually never watched the GPS because, well, I just have to watch that. So it's Rusty Overton. Oh, that's a good one. I don't know. I guess I don't know if he would be considered junior. Maybe he'll tell us. But good to see you, young man. Good to see you. So what was I saying? So basically, that's the Big Island. And so going back to this coffee. Now, this $2 Kona that I had in Hilo was, I guess, really unsurprisingly difficult to drink. It was very defect-ridden, very heavily infested with what we call CBB damage. And CBB is known as coffee berry borer in English, or what they call la broca in Spanish. But basically, these are little insects that burrow through the coffee, eating it. And what it does, it destroys. If they're allowed to fester, they will totally destroy the bean itself. But if there is a lot of that damage, it tends to turn into and you use that in coffee, it gives a very muddy, earthy, unpleasant character to the coffee. Like, sometimes you'll get earthy and it's a sweet, nice taste. But when you get that earthy, muddy, kind of like heavy, that's just not so nice, that is not very nice. Technically not junior. Okay, that's what I figured. No one's ever referred to you with the junior moniker. That's why I didn't think that was the case. So this $2 coffee was pretty much defect ridden and just not really not worth drinking, to be honest with you. So I tossed it after a few minutes. Now, why is this? Because we have, Kona, but so coffee of Hawaii is regulated by the state of Hawaii, and they have regulations that prevent that state that if you were going to export coffee as Kona, it has to meet a certain grade. And by export, I mean leaving the state of Hawaii. If it stays within the state of Hawaii, that designation doesn't really hold. As long as it's from Kona, as long as it's all Kona, it can be labeled 100%. Now, how is this coffee that's really defect-ridden sold as Kona? Well, Kona is really just an origin designation, right? And so whenever you're producing coffee, and like in Kona, like there is rust, leaf damage, there is insect damage, and there could be processing defects. When you spend money on a $90 coffee, or a very expensive coffee, let's say a $25 to $30 a pound coffee, even from other parts of the world, those coffees are typically very well sorted. So they're taking very hard care and a lot of pains to make sure that, or to try to prevent CBB and rust from invading their crops. And then if there is some of that, they're going to sort the coffee very carefully and look to pull those defects out, as well as, careful processing of the coffee and making sure that everything is done just right throughout the process. essentially this $2 Kona is everything that they've sorted out of their best quality. They've put it into a big lump and said, okay, we're going to sell this at a very steep discount. And people will buy it. And that's the thing, that's the one thing that I learned like many years ago talking to a broker when we were in Addis Ababa. And I was in that early phase of the career where it's like, oh, I only the best coffee should be sold ever. And I kind of said that to this guy. He's like, the reality is that we have all coffee must be used, right? And there's a customer for every coffee, no matter how low the quality, it needs to be utilized. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And so I understand better now that, it's not exactly the best coffee in the world, but it does need to be used. We need to respect our product enough to find a marketplace for it. And there's a lot of people out there that will love it. Add some cream, add some sugar, and that's acceptable flavor. I tend not to be one of those people, but that's perfectly understandable. All right, so it's 8:56 now. It's almost time for our live our premiere to start. So I've got if you don't know where it is, I've got the link in the description down below to the video. And it is called Man of God Tries Coffee for the First Time with one of my dear friends, Father William Alvarez-Tulua. And I hope you let me know what you think about it. Love to hear your thoughts on the video itself. We're going to be going to a place called Honua's Coffee House in Naalehu, Hawaii. And all right. So that should be it for today. I think I babbled on enough. After this, I'm heading off for dim sum today and then with my cousin, and then have to make some deliveries, and then I'm supposed to go to a birthday dinner tonight. They just made it up last night, but I was like, all right, I'll come. Means I have to be out the whole day. All right, so thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. If you have the chance, we're going to we do our Coffee and Cigars live stream every Thursday night on the Ono Live channel. Come join us Thursdays at 8 p.m. And actually this weekend, guys, I might be in New York City. So there's a place called Cinegear that's happening. It's a conference about filmmaking that's happening at Industry City in Brooklyn. If you're interested, it's free registration. If you go to cinegear.com, that's available if you have any interest in production. It seems kind of interesting. I've told my nieces that I'll take them up to New York so they can go see and hang out with their other cousin that lives up there. All right, so have a great one. Thanks to see you. Rusty, have a great one. Brian, Young Ma, and all of you guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're watching the replay, let me know what you think. Drop your comments down below. And see you again soon.